To the honourable member for Bowman.
Deputy Speaker, the stunning southern Moreton Bay Islands are truly a series of jewels in Moreton Bay, and it's a unique honour for me to represent these populations that are one of the few subtropical islands in the world where residents can commute over water every day to a major capital city. Of course, that brings with it extraordinary challenges with having to catch water taxis and vehicle barges, sometimes more than once a day. And particularly in the context of non-subsidised transport for those who don't have concession cards, it represents a significant added burden on cost of living for those residents. So obviously this engages the minds of everyone who represents that part of the world at all three levels of government. And it obviously throws our minds back to the 1970s when, in fact, these islands were, with very little research and thinking, subdivided without any undertaking for infrastructure charges to be extracted from those who developed and sold off the land. And today we are now reaping those short-sighted decisions of the 1970s. So without casting any blame, there is a need for a solution, and most would understand that the revenue model of local government is such that those sort of challenges simply cannot be overcome by being passed to council alone. It will require state and federal government to work together. Now, of course, islanders also face that unique predicament, which is that in addition to that wonderful quality of life, people say if you move to an island, you choose to take on that certain level of isolation and with it fewer services. But there comes a point where Australian citizens should be able to say, I can reasonably access a doctor, I can reasonably access food and essentials on that island without having to take either undue risks or enormous expense to obtain them. And so seniors predominantly who find themselves on the island and young families who find that there are not adequate facilities for their children are right, completely right, to be asking for solutions to those challenges. Right now, the key problem is parking. And anyone on those islands will tell you that the plans being considered by Redland City Council to charge for parking presents an extraordinary financial challenge on families that are feeling the greatest pressure of all. And you only have to visit South East Queensland to know about those cost of living pressures. So, Deputy Speaker, the challenge is on the Council to come up with solutions through a consultancy called GHD, but the solution ultimately coming to fruition will be the job of state and federal governments. And I'm really calling on Council to engage those other two levels of governments to work towards a sustainable solution. Parking for 2,400 cars will never be easy along a foreshore in Redland Bay, and the options of multi-storey parking are frequently extremely expensive and difficult to justify the revenue model. So it's the Our Parking Spot group, and I want to acknowledge Stuart Summerland and Ellen Ulrich and Gay James, Claire Malloy, Val Marsden, Lorraine Taylor, and of course Joanna and Lindsay Hackett and Gail, the whipmaker, who together have worked to 24 hours, 7-day a week, man a tent embassy outside of Redland City Council. And this is a fantastic example of people power, because this small island community, in many cases out of sight and out of mind of South East Queensland residents, were able to move 24 hours a day to stake out effectively this council until they would commit to doing the transport studies that the Our Parking Spot group called upon, and commit to providing the car parks. Now, of course, Council cannot do it alone, I emphasise that, but it's so important for Council not just to pay lip service, not just to talk about consultation, but to engage. And there are many other groups on the island as well who are asking for the very same thing. Groups like Lee Shipley and his colleagues who are looking at new and novel ferry and water taxi solutions around Moreton Bay. Look, the islanders are here to stay. The islands themselves are jewels in Moreton Bay. We have a chance to optimise so many things about services to those islands. It'll just take a little bit of forethought and a little bit of future planning. But for now, it's this Redland City Council that must rise to the challenge. 6,000 signatures from locals, most of them mainlanders, saying, though we do not live on the islands, we can understand the needs. We know it's an ageing population. We know there's small kids who must finish school and transition into a trade and a career. And we know from the St Vincent de Paul studies that these are one of the socio-economic challenged areas in Australia. So as a federal member, I will never lose sight of that. We will work. We know there won't be any short, simple decisions, and I sympathise with Council for that. And I know at yesterday's general meeting that the Mayor did pass a mayoral minute confirming that parking charges won't be spread throughout the length and breadth of Redland, but that they still are looking at those options around Wynham Creek. I put my support fully with the residents of the islands who are asking for nothing more than an affordable solution. And if that ultimately means incorporating the travel on the bay into South East Queensland's TransLink arrangement so that travelling on water is simply another zone of public transport, then that would be a very important advance, as well as access to parking for all islanders, both secure and non-secure.